That's the key, like, Romero thing. And then, of course, at the end, they kill the black guy, and it basically looks like a lynch. You know, it looks like a lynching. And that made that movie come out on, like, pins and needles. And it was a huge hit, but he forgot to copyright it, and the rest is history. So Dawn, and then Night, and then Day. And Day of the Dead, it's not like it's the greatest movie ever. It has amazing gore, okay? The gore is... Dawn, Night, then Day. Day you still haven't seen. But Day works because he basically he was going to make a zombie movie every 10 years. And he was going to, once he realized that his movies had these political undertones, again, he wasn't actually aware of it. He wrote Night because it was a story he thought up. He wrote Dawn because people were like, you should make a sequel to that movie. And this guy invited him to the mall in Pittsburgh. It was one of the first shopping malls to ever open. And back then, shopping malls were ironically made by a German socialist. And he brought them to America. He brought the design to America because of urban sprawl. And he wanted to try to stop sprawl and try to help the United States. So he came up with this idea that you'd have this all-in-one building. And shopping malls back then, Tucker, were like actually really badass. So they were big, but they weren't like how, you know, Easton is just like stores. They had apartments in them, and they had grocery stores in them, and they had hardware stores in them. They were meant to be mini cities inside buildings. Yeah, you could live in there, you work in there, you could have a city in there. So those first shopping malls were really cool. I think in the 1970s, we're building the space shuttle. Like, the United States is no joke, all right? We basically built a fucking sports utility vehicle for space in the 70s. We landed on the moon in 69. So this German socialist brings us the shopping mall. And so, of course, our major cities, America's in a, you know, #1 economy in the world. We go hard and we build these really epic shopping malls. And Pittsburgh was one of the first ones. And they're fortresses. They had backup generators, they had backup ventilation systems. The United States government decided to get involved with them and make them into bomb shelters, for God's sake. That's why when they break in Dawn, there's all those emergency supplies up in the top. That was meant to be like, because we're still in the Cold War then with the Soviets. So like, hey, if we get attacked, go to the mall. We'll hold out in the mall.
Safest place in the city.
Yeah. I mean, so, and then of course they became strip malls, and they became just these, the dark irony, call that sardonic, of like the shopping mall is it was made by a socialist to try to help the United States stop sprawling out and preserve its natural good soil and so forth, and the farmland and forests. And yet it became a typical American thing. And now they're dying, and there are all these just empty plots everywhere. So he just was like, this would be a good place to hold out in. So he was sent over to Rome, and he wrote the script. Then in 1986, he's like, now he's aware. I think Day came out in like 81 though. But every 10 years he wanted to make these. And he's like, everyone was talking about how his movies had these undertones. So now he starts trying to write the movie with an undertone. And that's when his writing really changed. But at the same time, his core message was still like there. And his core message was like, you have this much larger problem everywhere. And society has common issues that go across race and gender, you know, like food instability or, you know, clean drinking water, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, of course, the zombies are the metaphor. Well, it's actually called an allegory when you use an object to tell to create symbolism. Building blocks that fast travel to the safe house in Austin. No God, but asswipe. So Day of the Dead is cool because it was during the AIDS epidemic. Do you know much about the AIDS epidemic, Tucker?
Nope.
The AIDS epidemic was basically limited to gay people. It started in Africa, and it was kind of like monkeypox this last year. But because it was limited to mostly the homosexual community, it got ignored. And there was a lot of like prejudice shit that came out because of it. Like,
I'll be right back.
All right. Oh, going the wrong way.
I'm back.
All right. So people called it like the gay cancer and said it's what gay people get. Like, there was a lot of really bad stuff. The whole like pride stuff that happens today. All of that stuff started in the 80s because basically gay people were left to die. The Reagan administration claimed, hey, we're going to help you, but they didn't actually help them. And people weren't willing to touch them. People weren't even willing to look at them. People didn't understand the disease. And it killed a lot of gay people, and they didn't need to die, and they had to suffer needlessly, and it was wrong. But the reason that is relevant to Day of the Dead is the scientists who were studying the AIDS virus back then were telling the government it's not like limited to gay people. Anybody could get it. A virus doesn't care if you're gay, straight, rich, poor, black, white, red, white, yellow. It doesn't matter. Just a virus like COVID. And the government was kind of like, yeah, but it seems to be mostly in the gay community, so we're not going to really care too much about it. And then you had other stuff going on. Like, by then, climate change is really already becoming like an issue that people are talking about and concerned about. So you had the Reagan administration, and at the same time you have scientists and there was this anti-science bend that started during the Reagan years. They kind of dug more into like religion and took away a lot of the science. We used to have a pretty rigorous science curriculum in the U.S.
Yeah.
Because again, the U.S. What is those videos you've watched on the U.S.? What's supposed to be our superpower?
I guess just accepting a lot of stuff because the U.S. accepts a lot of different ideas.
Right, we're innovative. We were founded on being a new nation, going against different. So we go against the grain. We're not old like Europe. So we're willing to accept new ideas, and sometimes it can hurt us because we don't like have a lot of things culturally that we cling to.
Look out, there's a tank like right outside.
All right, sweet. Oh shit.
Holy
Never
crap.
mind on sweet. So yeah, innovative. And so it's kind of weird to be like anti-science or whatever. But I'll try to sum it up quick. The gore is amazing. That's what makes Day of the Dead really good. And the second thing is you have a military. I'm reviving you. You have a military officer, and your captain has died as you enter Day of the Dead. Oh, whoops. The main commander of their fort succumbed to the virus. He was bitten.
There is 2 tanks outside.
Yeah, this is insane.
I'm setting up a field radio.
I set up 2 of them already.
All right.
And he was like the last bit of stability. And they're searching for survivors, desperately searching for survivors, running these rescue missions, and they can't find anyone. So they don't think there's anyone left. And that's the great thing about Day of the Dead is they're pretty much implying there is no one left. It's the end of the world, officially now. And you have like 3 scientists and like 6 soldiers. And everybody has very key roles. You got like the commander, and he's got like Napoleon syndrome. He's like a nutcase. He loves the power, but what is he really ruling over? Like, what's his kingdom? And his feeling is that we just need to load up on ammunition and guns and get out there and start shooting them. And then you have the scientists who are still looking for cures. And of course they can't cure it because, you know, they're dead. There's no reversing it or anything, even though they're still kind of like digging in. And there's a lot of cool science in there. It's not actually all that hokey. And this Dr. Logan is always at odds with the military commander. So just like AIDS, there's like the scientists and the government are at odds on how to handle this situation. And the scientists come up with a novel idea on how to beat the zombies. Can you guess what that might be?
Just don't touch them, let them die.
Come again?
Let them rot.
To train them.
Oh.
So, you know, Shaun of the Dead, they become like grocery workers and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, because they're still got a brain that's active in there somehow, Dr. Logan. Oh shit. Did you respawn?
I'm stuck on a chair.
That's bizarre.
I'm back.
Dude, we're surrounded.
Yeah.
He starts training this zombie called Bub. And he trains it like, you know how when we train Gilbert, we give him a super worm?
Yeah.
Well, he's got to feed Bub. So he figures out that Bub won't actually bite him if he feeds Bub. But he's feeding Bub the last commander of the base. He dug him up. And they basically find out about it. And the one main girl, the protagonist is a female scientist. She's angry about it because she doesn't feel like there's any application. Like, yeah, okay, you can train them, but if you have to feed them human flesh, what the hell's it gonna do? We don't have human flesh just lying around, and the ability to scale that up and train like a whole army of zombies, how the hell are we gonna do that? So he wants to train the zombies to not eat us, and then he wants to train them to go out and like kill other zombies. People used to think that was hokey as hell, but it's actually one of the ideas that kind of actually aged pretty well, because it was...
Holy crap!
What happened?
Something huge just in the house.
I keep seeing the flames that we're being engulfed in. Holy crap, you're right. Wow. These guys are so tough.
There's like 2 tanks outside.
Hey, can you see where your mom's at on your phone?
No, I can't. Doesn't have like 360.
Okay. So the captain finds out about it, gets really pissed, and kills Dr. Logan. And this pisses Bub off because Bub came to love Dr. Logan. And Bub gets a gun and starts hunting down the captain. Meanwhile, one of the people in the base, dude, this house is holding up against all. Wow, this is insane, actually.
The textures are breaking on the house.
Yeah, they are. How are these guys not dead? We've been just unloading into their asses.
Holy crap! Oh, there's one.
There's one. That was a big bada boom. You looting it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so
This has to be related to this side quest. It feels like we activated it or something.
we're talking about Bub.
Bub. So Bub gets trained by Dr. Logan, and he's being trained by feeding him human flesh from the base commander that had died to start the movie. And once I should remember his name, but I don't. The new base commander finds out about it. He already doesn't agree with the scientist. He already thinks it's stupid. And there's only one woman left in the base too, so that's also a pretty tenuous situation. And
There can only be one.
yeah, like, you know, and it's just a bunch of guys. It's not very good. And basically, even the lead character, the female scientist, isn't very happy with Dr. Logan, because even though he's like a genius, this idea doesn't make any sense. How are you going to scale up the zombie army? You know, if you got to feed them human flesh to train them, someone's going to have to die. And there's I picked a lock back here. So basically, Bub goes and hunts down the commander, and a guy that had a psychotic break goes and he opens the main gates, and all the zombies that have built up outside of the gates come in, and it's a slaughter. It's one of the goriest scenes in movie history. But even though it's not like the greatest zombie movie or whatever, it's the fact that after you watch it, the gore sticks with you, and the zombies are really cool. I mean, the zombie makeup's really good. And you start to realize, like, he was getting at something a little bit more here. That, you know, it's the end of the world, for God's sake. And even then, we still can't get along. The scientists finally come up with basically a novel solution. And even though it's kind of like insane, it's the most progress they've ever made on actually fixing this. It just came so late.
That reminds me of heard about a while ago. It was like a question. It was like, you get to pick 5 other people to go into a bunker with you to survive for 5 years against an apocalypse. Who would you pick? And a lot of people would pick like doctors, medics, scientists, engineers.
Right.
But then people don't realize that since they're all so different, they'd all be fighting one another. That's why sometimes it might just be better to have a bunch of regular people who all have a lot of stuff in common, so that way they fight less often and they can work together.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. There's a movie based on that because that's a philosophical argument. It's like 5 people to survive the end of the world. In the movie, basically the guy, it's sort of like The Cube. You and I watched The Cube, right?
Think so?
It's the horror movie where they have to escape the cube.
Oh, yep, we've seen that.
And how at the end it's actually the guy with a disability makes it out. He's the only one that survives it. But in that movie,
doesn't he just like barely get out though?
Yeah, and other people kind of have to die to get him through. But anyway, the thing with that movie is, or the whole apocalypse movie with the 5 people, is you find out all these people that you would assume are worthless have a lot of hidden strengths. Like they're emotionally resilient, or they'll make people laugh, which keeps people happy. Or the guy in the wheelchair turns out to be a Juilliard level musician, and because he can play music, it keeps people calm. And because all of them don't have like egos, they're already humble and have humility because they're not valued very much. They all get along a lot easier because they're more willing to get along. That's what the movie kind of argues, but which is interesting. Which it just comes down to the idea like you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and you shouldn't just like disregard people based upon how they look or their background and
Got
stuff.
some Dar man messaging.
Yeah, Dar man, but it's better because it's actually a decent movie. And
ooh, apply cold water to a burned area.
huh?
Apply cold water to a burned area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that from the game or is that a Dar man thing?
You know, like a roast.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
All right, I don't get it. Explain it to me.
You know what happens when you roast somebody, right?
Oh yeah. Right.
So you apply cold water to a burn.
Okay, I get it. I see. Is that a thing in the middle school right now?
No.
Oh.
So your first one was dawn. Your second one is night.
Dawn, night, day, and now George has 3 more movies he's gonna make. And so Day of the Dead came out. It was basically a commercially flopped hard. It had a limited release. Horror movies weren't really in vogue. It didn't have the budget he wanted. It was R-rated. It just didn't do well, and so that was kind of it. But then you have Return of the Living Dead, which you and me watched, but that wasn't a Romero thing. But there was still kind of a hunger, if you'll forgive the pun, for zombie movies. So he doesn't come back until the freaking 2000s, and he finally makes a new movie. And I was always keeping tabs on George Romero because I was always like, when's he gonna make the next one? All the fans wanted that. When's he gonna make the next one? But what he makes is Land, and Land is number 4. He makes Land of the Dead, and Land of the Dead is about this area in Pittsburgh, which is an island called Fiddler's Green. And Fiddler's Green manages to have this skyscraper where they zombies for some reason won't cross water. That's what you learn in this one. That anybody who was surrounded by water was actually safe during this whole thing for some reason.
So zombies are scared of water and fire.
Yeah. In his world, zombies are scared of water and fire. Now, he starts off strong because he has, I think I've showed you the opening where all the zombies are basically like living their day-to-day lives again.
Yeah.
Yeah, which honestly, I appreciate the metaphor. But It's a movie that I think if it had another hour, it could have been really good. But because it's just an hour and a half, he has to really slim down the movie. And because of that, it's not really that good. But basically, the idea behind the movie is people go out and they have to feed Fiddler's Green. And they go out in this vehicle called the Dead Reckoning. And the Dead Reckoning is
It's like this big armored up train, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a super armored up train that is like a bunch of semis basically strapped together. And they go out in these roving marauder gangs and they loot what's left of towns. And one of the towns, and they keep talking about how all the things they use to loot cities are no longer working. Like they use fireworks to distract the zombies, and the zombies don't focus on the fireworks near as much. And how the zombies seem to be getting more effective at like just fighting the humans. They seem to like lie in wait, and it's getting more dangerous, and there's getting to be less people, and they keep having to get further out to get supplies. And they seem to be like learning and adapting. And of course, then there's a thing that people hate about that movie, which is they bring back Bub and they go even harder. Like now it's the mechanic zombie, and the mechanic zombie is a smart zombie. He's a leader. So it goes into like, people think that one of the ways that humans evolved is you look at dogs, you look at wolves, and you look at their social structure, and that's the basis of communication and evolution, is that whole hierarchy thing is the building block of all communication.
Have one person in charge.
Yeah. And that's what Mechanic Zombie is. He's the leader. Oh, a tank. And the town gets attacked. And it's sort of like The Girl with All the Gifts, which is actually a really good book. In that the Mechanic Zombie. He's got a name. It doesn't matter, though. Bubba. Yeah, sure, that works. Bubba. People are like, we should just leave the zombies alone now. They're not, like, bothering us anymore. And Bubba is pissed because they ransack his town. And they kill, like, a bunch of the zombies in the town. Which are now his friends, I guess. Like, the teenager zombies make out. And yeah, and like the band zombie, they play in the band in the gazebo, and the postman zombie, and there's the butcher zombie. And so he's pissed, and he knows where they all live. He knows where Fiddler's Green is because it's a big skyscraper that lights up. And then there's all these rich people in there. And they live, the grass does knock down. That's kind of neat. And it's like a little fiefdom. So, yeah, far away. Oh, we're going the wrong way. This freaking game and its shitty compass. Oh, here it is, right up here. I'm gonna stop right here.